Good morning, sir, and welcome. Please make your video so that participant may have a look, and I will introduce you.
Okay, let me see.
Okay. So, good morning, one and all. Our resource person, a very dynamic personality, Dr. Saif Abrar, is with us, and it's my pleasure to introduce him in this technical session. He is also an alumni of this university. So that is also a very interesting thing today, that he is contributing to his alma mater. Dr. Saif Abrar earned his PhD from the Technical University of Tallinn, Estonia, after completing bachelor's and master's from Aligarh Muslim University and IIT Delhi, respectively. With close to 2 decades of industry experience, he has contributed to computing systems ranging from tiny microcontrollers to high-performance architectures. Currently, he leads a team in IBM working on next-generation processors and cognitive systems. His research interests include artificial intelligence systems, computer architectures, system-level design, and performance analysis, with a keen interest in upcoming disruptive technologies. In addition to corporate responsibilities, he is actively involved with academic institutes. He has driven many industry academia and projects and actively shares his experiences and knowledge with the faculty and students. Dr. Saif has delivered keynotes, addresses, and various expert lectures in various international conferences, drives the IP activities in his organization, that is Invagilisis AI Capable Application Development. Today, Dr. Saif Abrar is with us to conduct a hands-on session on intelligent apps development using IBM Western. I welcome Dr. Saif Abrar, and I will request please proceed.
Okay, thanks a lot, Dr. Abdul Samad Sam. Thanks for introducing, and welcome to all the participants to this exciting session on IBM Watson and how we can develop intelligent applications using Watson. So we'll just focus on the presentation to continue. Okay, so this is what we are going to go through in today's session. So I'll be introducing you the IBM Watson system, and then we'll do, as usual, hello world kind of a thing that we do for any programming language. And then proceeding further with how do we make intelligent applications using Watson, and what to do, how can we integrate Watson with the rest of the functionalities. So this is at a very high level that what we are going to cover today, and we'll get more in depth into each of this as the session proceeds. So as Dr. Abdul Samad Saab told us, so I have industry experience as well as working with academics for past 2 decades, and I'm actively working with different academic institutes in different capacities, and also I'm a part of academic ambassador program of IBM. So in case any of the academic institutes here wants to have academic relations with IBM, then please feel free to contact me, and then we can proceed from here. Okay, so going forward, so we all of us have an experience of playing games on computers, right? So what we are seeing on screen is a very famous championship that was held between the chess champion Garry Kasparov and IBM computer that was named as Deep Blue. So those who are so this was in 96-97 time frame. So it was a series of matches that were conducted, and the intent with all these championships against humans is to show how the computers are progressing, the compute power and the algorithms, they are progressing forward. So those who are senior members over here, they might remember this championship between Garry Kasparov and IBM Deep Blue. Of late, very recently, a few years back, there was this championship about a Chinese game that is called Go, and he's the Go world champion called Lee Sedol, by the name of Lee Sedol. And this supercomputer is from Google called AlphaGo. And again, it was a number of matches that were held between AlphaGo and Lee Sedol. So going in the same spirit, IBM introduced the computer, the supercomputer, the intelligent supercomputer Watson in a game show that is called Jeopardy. So the Jeopardy is a very famous game show, a quiz competition in US. And what we see on left and right are the world champions, Ken and Brad. And in the middle is the IBM Watson. So this championship, this was again multiple games that were conducted on Jeopardy, and IBM Watson participated in those. So it was in 2011 that these were conducted. This Jeopardy, IBM Watson was introduced to the world via this game Jeopardy. So as you can see, right, and you can imagine a quiz competition. So here you can see that the IBM Watson is directly, it is just standing like any other human being in terms of that there is nothing special that is there for IBM Watson being a computer. He has to listen what the question is being asked. So just like a normal human being, and he has to get the answer like we all do from our experience and memory, and it has to deliver the answer in a natural voice in a better timing than the world champion in order to win the game. And if it does not, then it obviously loses the game. So this was in 2011 that this game happened. IBM Watson was introduced to the world via this game Jeopardy. And just to give you an idea of what does at that time IBM Watson looked like. So on the right hand side, you see the actual computer. Actually, it's a supercomputer, you can say, a Power 7 based multiple rack, multiple core cores that are involved to make the IBM Watson supercomputer at that time. And interestingly, Watson went on to win this game Jeopardy with a prize of $1 million, and it defeated both the world champion Ken and Brad in that. And as you can see on the left hand side, the world champion Ken says, "I for one welcome our new computer overlords." So he was so much impressed by the performance of Watson playing against humans in natural voice that he wrote this comment. And after winning this prize of million. So IBM donated half of it to the World Vision and another half to the World Community Grid. So at this point of time in 2011, IBM Watson was introduced to the world, in which it can understand the natural language and it can process that information, and then it can communicate back with the humans, those it is interacting with. So this is how normally the industry introduces the latest supercomputers to the world, through some interesting games or difficult games, and competing against the world champions, as we saw for the chess, also for the Go also, and similarly in this Jeopardy quiz competition. So those of you who are really interested in going deeper about IBM Watson, so there is a special IEEE issue that was totally dedicated to Watson. So it's a Watson special issue that came out in 2012, and it has all the details, the technical details about IBM Watson, and what are the algorithms, what are the capabilities at that point of time, how does it do the reasoning, information retrieval, what are the algorithms inside it. So those who really want to go much deep into it, so this they can go through this special issue of IEEE on Watson. So here I'll just be giving you a very high level overview about Watson before going deep down into it. So as we can understand, so IBM Watson is a cognitive system. So it's much more than a compute-only system, but it is cognitive in that it can understand at that point of time natural language and the human speech, and then it can do some reasoning based on what its experience has been and what are the algorithms that are inside Watson. And then as it progresses, it can learn from the responses, from the feedback, and it can adapt itself in terms of the learning algorithms. So it is a cognitive system in this sense, and it has many different technologies have to come together to make the IBM Watson function. So for example, what we saw, the face of IBM Watson in that Jeopardy championship was an Apple MacBook. And then there was a game controller that did the lots of stuff like strategies for clue selection, for voice synthesis, etc. And then it has a very special engine that was called Deep QA, and this was a set of lots of algorithms that were put together, and then special architecture, both the software and the hardware architecture, to make it function properly. And then, as we can understand, the hardware has to be very special, as well as the software has to be very special in order to make such kind of a supercomputer that can work with the humans and can defeat the world champions. So in terms of the hardware, it consisted of 88 compute nodes, and then 2 storage nodes, and then lots of other stuff, etc. And how did the IBM Watson learn was it used different sources were giving in for the inputs. For example, the encyclopedias, it has digested dictionaries, it has gone through different books, online web pages, etc. So lots of newspapers. So it has actually read all these things in order to make up its database, and in order to learn the information that is out there in the world. And then it has more than 100 algorithms that are working inside IBM Watson to analyze the natural language, to make the hypothesis, to find out which one is the best of them, to make the evidence, to do the scoring of each of the hypotheses and the evidence, and finally to come out with the best answer. So lots and lots of algorithms work in parallel in IBM Watson to make up the intelligent and cognitive system. So this is just a basic architecture about the question and answer. How does it work is that it has two main elements. So it's actually a big pipeline of algorithms. So when a question is asked, it went through different stages of engine called a conversation engine, where it parses the question, it parses, it understands what is being asked, and then finally it gives to the another set of pipeline called discovery, where it goes into its information database and tries to find out what are the best matches, and then it scores each of this answer to before figuring out which one is the best of them to give out, to speak out, so that that can be a winning answer. So this is just a very high level overview of the basic architecture of Watson. So this is just about question and answer that the Watson was introduced to the world with. And then going forward, lots of different capabilities have been added. So for example, there is a speech to text that Watson can do. It can do now visual recognition, language translation, text to speech. And then as well as it has a knowledge studio where it can learn on site. For example, it is employed in any industry, then it can learn about the algorithms of that industry from the data of that specific industry. So lots of capabilities have been introduced into Watson. So what started in Jeopardy in 2011 as a question and answer supercomputer has now evolved into a big supercomputer, a cognitive supercomputer that can do lots of functionalities. We'll see some of them going forward. So this is kind of the system architecture that Watson question and answer has. So starting with question, and then there is an analysis, then question decomposition, and then hypothesis generation. So as you can see, right, so the hypothesis generation, it goes into parallel. So as we saw, right, so there are multiple computers that are working in parallel in IBM Watson, and all of them generate the hypothesis in parallel, and then they do the evidence scoring. So which of them has higher score, which of them has a lower score, and then finally it gives one of them which has the highest confidence. The Watson thinks that it is the best answer, and then it speaks out with a confidence score also. So it will come up with 2-3 final answers, and then it will look at which one has the highest percentage of confidence, and it will speak out that as the best answer that it can find out to the question that is being asked. So interesting point to note here is that although the algorithms themselves are very straightforward and standard algorithms, the main thing here is that it works on different algorithms in parallel, so that it can come out with different answers, and also the confidence rating for each of this answer before giving as the best answer. So it does not internally, it computes different answers for each of the question, and then depending on the confidence score, it does the it gives the final answer with the confidence rating that it has. Okay, so once it has in 2011, when the Watson was introduced to Jeopardy, so initially it started as an IBM research project, and it went on to work for 4 or 5 years. IBM research spent on making the Watson suitable for Jeopardy and suitable for a quiz competition kind of a thing. And then finally, in 2011, we saw that the Jeopardy challenge was there. So then after that, IBM started the commercialization of IBM Watson. And so the first instance of its commercialization was in healthcare. So it was employed as assistant to doctors in diagnosing different diseases. So we'll just show a very brief overview how it helps or assists the doctors in diagnosis. And similarly, it went on further into financial services, and then in different industries, Watson is being used now. So what started as a research project went on to win the question answer Jeopardy challenge is now employed in different industries, giving the solutions to the experts over there. And now it, as mentioned earlier, it has lots of capabilities to, it has a vision capability, it can hear, it can talk like humans, it can interpret the human language, it can learn from the feedback, it can do some recommendations also. So in terms of this, it becomes an assistant to the human experts in terms of giving the answers back or recommending something to the human experts. So these are some of the industries where it is being employed: in healthcare, in financial services, in tech support, in government projects also, and we'll further down the line see how it is being employed in many industries. So just to give you an example, how does it work in healthcare? So when a patient comes to a doctor with some symptoms, doctor can speak in natural terms. For example, what condition has red eye and pain and blurred vision? So these kind of whatever symptoms the doctor is seeing in the patient, it can speak in natural language to Watson. Now, what happens is that Watson has, as we saw earlier, it can be taught the language of a particular domain also. So in this case, Watson has been specialized for healthcare, and it has access to large data related to healthcare. Then in terms of, for example, there are medical journals out there, then doctors write some blogs, there are evidence from the clinical trials, etc. So Watson has access to all those things, and it can start analyzing this huge information. So here comes the advantage of a machine over a human being, that a machine can analyze such kind of a huge data in much shorter time than a human being. And also it can be fed this data across the world to make it more and more powerful, which is really very time consuming for a human to do this act. And after analyzing the symptoms against the data, the clinical or the healthcare data that it has, then it can suggest different diagnoses to the doctor back. That Watson can say that I suspect that this is this disease with this confidence, or this under disease number 2 with a lower confidence level, and disease number 3 with still lower confidence level. And then so this Watson works as an assistant to the human expert in the domain it has been employed, and based on the hypothesis that the Watson has given back to the expert, a doctor in this case, then the doctor can look into other evidences also. For example, what is the family history in that case, what is the current medications that the patient is taking, etc. And then finally doctor can come up with the best analysis for that patient in that case, which might be same as what doctor is suspecting, or it can be something new that doctor was not suspecting, and Watson can suggest it. So in this way, currently it works as an assistant to human experts, and based on the evidence that the Watson has given to the expert can take the final decision. And then the expert of that field can feedback his analysis back into Watson, so that it can learn that where it has performed better and where it still has to do some improvements. So this is one example how the Watson works as a very fast and very effective assistant to a doctor in healthcare domain. And similarly for the different industries, Watson can work as an assistant similarly. And since we have this faculty development program, so I just picked up some examples where the Watson is being used in teaching assistant also. So many companies have come forward and they have made these kind of a teaching aids, starting from small kids to the graduate students and to the researchers also, so that they can have access to a large database, and then Watson can help them discovering much faster information across the world, and it can work as a very efficient teaching assistant both to the faculty members as well as to the kids or to the research scholars also. So this is a brief overview that is there for Watson, and these are some of the references. One of the references, the IEEE journal that special edition from 2012 that I mentioned earlier, and these are some of the online references that you can refer to. So there is a complete dedicated website that we'll be accessing on IBM. So ibm.com/Watson, and then obviously on Wikipedia, you can find lots and lots of information about Watson, and then you can follow it on Twitter as well as on Instagram. So this is the website ibm.com/Watson that we are going to access, and that is the basis of learning more about Watson as well as doing the hands-on session on Watson. So I'll just be switching over to ibm.com/Watson in my web browser, and then we can start actually seeing Watson in action. Okay, so I have started sharing my browser, and I hope all of you can see it. So currently I'm on the WebEx page through which I joined. So I'm starting a new page and going to ibm.com/Watson. And now we start the fun stuff about Watson. So this is the actual website that you are seeing about IBM Watson. And it says IBM Watson is AI for smarter business. So this is how IBM pitches IBM Watson, that it is an AI solution to make your business smarter. So you have been already doing the business, and now you can do it much smarter using IBM Watson. So this is just the landing page of ibm.com/Watson, and then there's lots and lots of information inside it. So I'll just go quickly through the landing page, and then later you can. It's a very simple website to remember. It's only ibm.com/Watson, and later you can access it on your own and go through the lots of details. Okay, so here is some statistics where it says that IDC has ranked Watson as #1 for the last year in the market share. And then it says 70% of the global banking institutes are using Watson, and top 14 system integrators are using, out of top 14, 13 of the system integrators are using Watson in their systems. Okay, so there are more than 100 million users who are getting benefited by Watson. So it comes with the Trust implemented inside it. So those who are working in trustworthy AI, it's it's of a very interest to them. Trustworthy AI, it's a very hot research topic. If some of you want to work in research in AI, then this is a really hot topic to work on, trustworthy AI. And then, as we have been discussing, Watson is very efficient in doing the natural language processing, and this is what one of the main thing that the businesses look for when they are using Watson. And then it is also being used in automating lots of stuff in businesses using Watson. And this is not simple automation. This is AI enabled automation. That is intelligent automation that is being done by Watson. And then Watson can be accessed through different clouds also. So IBM itself has its own cloud that is called IBM Cloud. And then as many of us are aware, there are other clouds also, for example, from Microsoft, from Google, from Amazon. So over there, the Watson can also be accessed. So if you are making solutions in different clouds, then still it is possible to have the Watson functionality. Coming down, so this is some of the industries where the Watson has been put in risk and compliance, in financial operations, in advertising. So the latest is the return to workplace. So all of you are working from home currently, and many industries are using Watson to find out the best strategy how to return to the workplace. So this is really interesting. And in customer service, IT operations, healthcare, video streaming, so lots of places that, as we can see, right? So here are some major customers, the clients that are using Watson: GM Financial, Lufthansa, GSK. So it's a long list, right? So so this was just the landing page of Watson, and then from here we can get lots of information about Watson. We can read much more learn much more about Watson from this landing page. So I'm going to on the left hand side we have explore Watson product catalog, and this is what we are going to do the hands-on session, build with Watson. So on the left hand side, if you see, we have a build with Watson link, and this is what will take us straight into Watson. And this is really exciting. So it is taking me, as you can see, into the Watson products. The actual usage of Watson, where we can use the Watson. So now we are seeing what are the different products that Watson provides, which we can use ourselves to learn more about Watson or to make industry applications or enterprise applications. So each of them, only the name is highlighted over here, and then there's lots of details that is available when we click any of these solutions. As we can see, there are lots of solutions that the Watson provides. So starting with, there is a Watson Assistant, Watson Discovery, Watson Natural Language Processing and Understanding, speech to text, text to speech, Watson Knowledge Studio, Language Translator, Natural Language Classifier, and so many things going forward. So we can start. So IBM has provided some of these functionalities for learners like us also, so that we can learn for free about different capabilities of Watson, and then once we are satisfied with it, then we can go for more advanced business plans. So to begin with, we will start interacting with IBM Watson for language translation. So let us see how does this looks like, language translator using Watson. So till now we have used any applications online like Google Translate to do the translation, and now using IBM Watson we have this capability that we can develop our own language translator, and this is really exciting that we can make intelligent AI powered apps ourselves. So I click on it and it takes me to the language translation page. And what does it say? You can dynamically translate news, patents, documents, and obviously other things like speech also. So I can imagine making up an application, for example, a news application that can give news in my local language using this language translation. For example, there is some news provider that does that has a very high world ranking, but it provides news not in my native language. So it provides news in some foreign language, and I can use IBM Watson to fetch the news and then do the translation using Watson, and then have the news delivered in my local language. So we can imagine an application like that to be built using Watson. Then it introduces what is Watson language translator. So it says it translates text from one language to another. So there are many languages that Watson is already trained with in translation. Many of the global languages that are spoken across the globe, they are already paired to translate. And then it is still possible to make Watson learn a language that has not been translated earlier, that it does not know the translation about, and then it can start translating in that also. So for example, here in the features, we see that you can translate your content, and then also you can customize your translations. So in some of the industries, they can have very specific translation constraints. So it can be made industry specific, and similarly, it can be trained with new data so that it can learn a new language. Okay, so here it says at the very bottom, get started on IBM Cloud now. So as mentioned earlier, Watson is a supercomputer that can be accessed through cloud, and specifically through IBM Cloud. So if I click on this, so at the top, it was all the introduction and various capabilities. And if I click on get started, so it will take me to the actual Watson usage on the IBM Cloud. Okay, so we are on the IBM Cloud. We are now entering IBM Cloud. So those of you who want to work further, you can create a free account on this IBM Cloud and explore lots of features that the IBM Cloud provides. So it is just like another account creation in any of the online portals that we do. So similarly, you can create your free account over here. Now, before going ahead with actually using the Watson services, since we need to learn how to interact with Watson, so that is important. So there are certain technologies that we need to know and maybe learn also before we can interact with Watson. So I'll just go back my presentation to show you what are the technologies that are required to interact with Watson, and then we'll start our the actual access to the Watson. So in order to make the Hello World application to Watson, so these are the basic technologies that are required. So to start with, we have to get authenticated, right? So only an authenticated user can access Watson, and we'll see how do we get authenticated. Now there are few applications through which we can access Watson or any website, I would say. So one of them is curl, that is CURL, and using Python, using Java. So using these programming languages also, we can make applications. So any standard programming language that a person is familiar with, whether Swift or C++, he can make an application by which interaction with the Watson can be done. Now, how do we send and what we want Watson to do? the action or the request. So there has to be a standard format. So Watson uses a JSON format for that. So we see that these are all standard technologies that people already know, and this is used by Ibm Watson. So there is nothing new that a person has to learn in order to access. So those who are in software development domain, they're already familiar with these terms and these technologies. And how does we interact with Watson? Those are called the REST APIs. Those are the representational APIs. So any website or any service on the cloud, they provide APIs, and those are called REST APIs, by which a request can be made and a response can be received from that cloud service. And again, the response comes back to the user as shown in the below in JSON format. And once the response is received, then the application can do the further processing of the JSON format, the response received, and do the further processing based on that. So it's all standard technologies that people already know, through which any one of us can interact with Watson. So just to give you an idea about JSON, to get you started, so JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. So it is basically a text format, and text format that is in a key value pair. So it's as simple as that. Whatever you want to do, you provide in a queue a number of key and value pairs, and then you just send it across to any service on a cloud, and then it actually JSON, any application can be made up. Two applications can interact via using the JSON format also. So as you remember, so earlier we used to have the HTML format, then came the XML format, and now the standard way to interact between applications is this JSON format. So we can learn more about going to the json.org if you want to go more deeper into it. So as you can see on the right hand side is an example of a JSON file, JSON data structure. So JSON, any information, the key value pairs, they are enclosed in curly braces, and then it has to be a key and then a colon and the value of that key. So it's as simple as that. And two key value pairs are separated by a comma. So that's all there is to in JSON format. So it's very easy to write, and the humans can also understand it, as well as the machines can also understand. So this is a very simple format, and it is a standard format, and lots of libraries in different languages are available to make up the JSON format as well as to parse the JSON format. So it's really very simple, as you can see in an example on the right hand side. So these are some of the websites which you can refer to later, json.org. Similarly, there is jsonformatter.org where you can write some data and it would convert to JSON, or you can write a JSON format and it can validate whether it is proper JSON or not. And there are a number of books also available on JSON. Another one technology is the REST APIs, which stands for Representational State Transfer APIs. So it actually came out as a result of a PhD done in 2000, and it basically is used to send data in a request and get the response back from a service provider. Again, it's pretty simple. It has its own website, restfulapi.net. So here we see two systems, a client and a server. One is the client is sending some request in using this REST API. So here we see a request being sent in JSON format. So this is JSON, right? So everything enclosed in curly braces, and then we have two key value pairs. First key is city with value pairs and units in capital C, that is for Celsius temperature. So it is asking for it's a weather server, and it is asking the temperature of city Paris. And then again, the response comes back in JSON format. Again, two responses. One is the low temperature and the high temperature of 16 degrees Celsius and 23 degrees Celsius. So this is how two technologies, one is the REST API and another JSON format, works together so that any client can access any server or two applications, they can communicate with each other. So these are the standard ways of how the cloud works these days. Again, so at the first one is the, as we talked about, the RESTful APIs were a result of a PhD dissertation. So if you are really interested in going through that, then you can just go through the first reference, and then the rest of the information is available online also. And curl is an application that can be used to to interact with any of the website. So for example, when I write an application or an online portal name in my web browser, so what happens is that the web browser sends the command to the website, and whatever data it gets back, it displays in a proper format. So actually, the web browser gets the HTML data back with lots of latest technologies, and then it just displays. So with curl, what you can do is you can actually see that that data that is coming back from the portal where we gave the request for. For example, if I say curl and then google.com, so if I just write google.com on a web page on my browser, then it will show the Google web page. But if I use curl, then I can actually get the source code, the HTML source code of google.com. And then I can actually see what all content it has. Then, so it is an application by which we can interact over the cloud. So we saw JSON to format the data, and then the REST APIs to interact, and curl is the program by which we can send the REST. We can send those REST APIs and the JSON data to the online portal. So this is how. And one very important thing is the authentication, right? So we have to be authenticated on the cloud so that we can access the services that the cloud is providing. What we are normally used to is that we log in via a username and password. Now, this is also possible. We get this dialog box where we write the username and password. Similarly, using curl, we can also give with a -u username and password to any of the website where we want to get entry into. But as you can see, the problem here is that your password is exposed wherever you are trying to access that service. So in order to bring in security, there is a standard called open authentication. So using this OAuth service, there is a proper spec around this open authentication. So it gives you tokens. So once you have logged in into a service provider, then it will give you tokens, and your password is actually not known to anyone. And you can access those services using only those authentication tokens only. We will see that example also going forward in when we use Ibm Watson. So this is a token-based authentication by which we can authenticate to different services online. So here we come to how do we interact with Watson. So let us go back to our starting page on Ibm Watson. So you can just create a normal account with your own email on any of the provider, on Reddit Mail or Gmail or any other provider that you have, and you can make your own Ibm Cloud account. So I already have that account, so I'll just log in using my and this is another free account like any other online portal. So it's asking me, so it has all my details. It's asking me to continue. So I go ahead, and it's logging me into IBM Cloud. So verifying my username and password, and then it's going to give me access to IBM Cloud if everything goes well. So coming up. Okay, nice. So we are on the language translator page. This is really interesting. So now you can see we are into the IBM Watson finally, and we are starting with accessing the language translation service of IBM Watson. So we'll just quickly go through this from top to bottom. So what is interesting to us is, let us say, select a pricing plan. So what plan we want to subscribe to? That is what it is asking us. So to begin with, we have a light plan. And in this light plan, I can translate 1 million characters in a month. And it can identify 68 languages for me. And it can translate 12 file types in this light plan. And this light plan is free. So this is quite powerful, right? So 1 million characters is a huge amount if we want to learn or explore these basics about the translation service. So with this 1 million characters, so every month we can keep on doing it. And if we want to do some more learning, or we want to do some research based on language translation provided by Watson, so this is good enough for us. And then going ahead, there are different plans, and the standard plan, advanced plan, premium plan. So and then these become paid plans. For example, standard is 0.02 USD per 1,000 characters, and it removes a 1 million character limit, and first 250,000 characters are free. So as we keep on going, more and more capabilities through the IBM Cloud or IBM Watson translation service, and we keep on paying more and more to IBM Watson. So we'll stick to the light plan, which is free, and we can work with 68 languages. So this is really interesting. So at the right-hand bottom, we have a create, which will create a translator for me, a Watson service for doing the translation. So I click on create. So it is creating a translator for me, which I can start accessing. It's creating an instance of the translation service and taking me to my own translation instance on IBM Cloud. And now I can start working on it. And you see, it's quite intelligent. It takes you to the getting started page of the language translator. So it has created the language translator, as well as it knows that we are trying to learn about language translator. So it takes me directly to the getting started page. And we can read how to proceed. So this is a tutorial which we can translate text from English to Spanish, and also to identify the language in which a text is written. Going forward, so it says that we are going to use curl to do to give the translation request and get the response back. And so first command is it asks us to check whether curl is installed or not. So if curl is installed, then I can just say curl and -B, and it will give me the version of the curl. And if not, then I can download curl from this website, curl.hacks.se. So here, if you want to install for our Windows system, we can do for that. Curl is usually installed in Linux boxes that are provided. So if anyone is working on Linux, I hope curl will be already available to you. Okay, so going forward. So as we mentioned earlier, we need authentication to work on. So this is the getting started tab. On the left hand side at the top is a manage tab. So if I click on manage, this is where my authentication is. So you see this API key, and another is the URL. So URL is what I have to specify to curl to take this, to take the packet to this URL. And how to authenticate is using this API key. So I'll just show you the credentials. So as you can see, these are some random numbers or random phrase that has been generated by IBM Watson, especially for me or for this translation service. So I need to copy this API key and the URL. So these are the two things. So I have to authenticate when I send a request, a translation request to IBM Watson. I have to give this API key so that it knows that authenticated person is making this request. So now comes the power of that. I don't have to give my password anywhere. So this API key is only between me and Watson. So Watson has generated this API key, and I'm using this API key. And this is the URL that I have to give to the request. So this is where my request should go to, and the Watson will look into the API key and it will authenticate or not, depending on if I'm using the correct key or a bad key. So going back to the getting started page. So I hope this is visible, the curl command. So can anyone confirm whether the curl command is visible, or do I need to do something better to make it visible to you? Okay, I hope it is visible. So there are two places. One is what I'm highlighting, API key colon. So as we mentioned, so we have to give data in JSON format, that is in key value pair. So here we have to put the value of API key, and another is the URL. We saw the two parameters. One was the key and the URL. So at the last line is the URL that we have to mention. And with these two, we can give the curl command to get, okay, so what are the text? So here is in the example, it is giving two of them. This is a list, as you know. So one is the hello world, and another is a question, how are you? And which one? It is asking for English to Spanish. So these are the standard symbols of the languages. So from English, we want to the translation to Spanish. So as we saw, there are 68 languages which the IBM Watson translation service can be used for. So there are standard pairs between these languages, and we can see how does it look like. So I have to copy that API key and the URL from the manage page and put here and give this curl command on my command prompt. So this page has a very nice utility which says show credentials. I click on it. What it does is it actually puts those credentials in the curl command also. So you see now, earlier it was API key was written over here, but now the actual key has been copied over here. Similarly, we saw URL written over here, but now it has replaced with my authentication URL. So I can just copy this curl command and have an instance of a command prompt. So I hope my, okay, I have to share my command prompt to you, and it should become good. So I hope my command prompt is visible. And as the website said, first to check if I have curl. So I say curl -V. Okay, so it gives something back with the version information and lots of other things. So it means that I have the curl installed with me. Now, if you remember, we copied the curl command from the Watson web page. So I'm just going to copy paste that command back to into this prompt, and let us see what happens. So I have given my command prompt, and here you see the magic happening. So I have given the curl command, and the response comes back, which is displayed, which is I'm highlighting. So this is the response that I got from Ibm Watson, which says that I have given two words, hello world, and another was a question, how are you? And it has given me from English to Spanish. We have asked. So for the hello world, hola mundo, it has given us the translation in Spanish. And for the second one, como estás, it is giving us the translation. And this is really exciting that now I have the ability to make my own translation requests and to see how I can embed into a bigger application this translation. So I think we can play with it a little more. So this was the command that we gave. We can try to change something, some command, and see how does it look like in Spanish. Or okay, so let us try to translate from English to Hindi. So I hope it does a good job of translating hello world and how are you. So I'm going to give this command and we'll see how does it work. It has gone. Oh, great. So it has hello world. It has translated to hello dunya. This is nice. And how are you? It has identified it as a question, and it is writing aap kaise hain. So this is really impressive. It is doing good, and really I'm impressed with this. So if someone knows any other language which we can verify, or some other text, we can, anyone wants to try something out, then we can have that also. But this is really interesting to see. Let me see if an experiment, since we are all experimenters, can it, let me see, in Arabic, can it do something? It was good in Spanish, it was good in Hindi. Let us see if it can do something in Arabic. Oh, good. So it is writing Arabic also. And marhaba ayyuhal alam. And how are you? Kaifa haluk? So this seems good. So it is doing in different languages, and we can change the text.
Suppose we write Aligarh Muslim University, can it translate this?
What is the phrase?
Aligarh Muslim University.
Okay, so now this is really interesting, right? So as we discussed earlier also, every institute or industry has its own terminology for which for which it has to be trained especially. So for example, if it goes into, so it can only be trained on generic keywords. But if some, for example, it is employed in healthcare, then it has to make some special sense of that. Or if it is into, let us say, in finance domain, then it has to special considerations of. So every industry has its own terminology, and it has to be trained for that. So let us see what does it what it does for Aligarh Muslim University. So maybe it recognizes it, and so there are two possibilities. One is it translates it word by word, and if it is trained properly, then actually it should not translate. It should remain as it is. So let us see how does it work. Okay, first let us try something that we know. Let us try Hindi. What does it do? Oh, great. So it is writing back Aligarh Muslim University. So this is really interesting, right? So it is not, it is taking it as something that it is not translating it word by word, because
It is taking as a noun.
pardon?
It is taking as a noun?
Exactly, yeah. So it is taking it as a noun and not as a sentence, and that is why it has not translated it. Now, if I let us see, if I give a sentence using university, then let us say what does it do? For example,
Suppose you write, I live in a hostel at Aligarh Muslim University. Suppose like
it
this.
is still a noun. I let us say this is a good university. Now this is not a
Yeah,
noun,
Aligarh Muslim University is situated in Aligarh, for example.
right? Let us see what does it do. So ये एक अच्छा university. So this is a good university. It is saying this. ये एक अच्छा university. So now we can train it further. We can give some feedback about how good or how bad it is performing, and then it can come up with a better algorithm next time. Oh, this is nice. You see what I did? Earlier, I had given university with a capital U, and it recognized that to be a noun, and it does not change university. This is a good university with a capital U. It said ye ek acha university, which is okay. But it did not change university, right? Now I gave this is a good university and with a small u, and now it actually translated it. ये एक अच्छा एकीकरण है, and which is technically correct actually. So it has yeah, lots of different capabilities depending on how the word is written. It is doing the translation. This was really interesting, and it is giving impressive results also. Okay, so this was one capability that we have on IBM Watson. Let us see if something different we can try. So Okay, on the same Watson page, this was the example of translate text. There is another to identify the language. I mean, I give a text in some language, some unknown language, and ask Watson to identify in which language it is. This is what the identification means. Copy this example and give it to our command prompt. Oh man, so it has given a list of languages with the confidence score for each of them. And so these are the different languages that it understands. So for each of them, it is giving a confidence score that your text is what it thinks the text is with which confidence score. So to begin with, okay, so at the very top, so okay, the text was language translator translates text from one language to another. So this was in English, and it says language is English, and with 99.99% confidence, it says that this is English, and this is good. And for the rest of the languages, it is giving. If you see at the end, it has E and -7. So it is giving in exponent of -7, that is 0.0000%. This is this language. So obviously this is going into zeros, and it says that there is no chance that this is this language or this. So it is 99.99% confident that this is English language. So this is how it can identify. So if we know some other language, then we can try it. Otherwise, this is one of the functionality that Watson provides to us. So if we have a text in some other language, we can feed that text to Watson, and it can identify for us the language as well as it can translate it for us. And then going forward, it has, okay, there is a translator document also. And then we can see what are the next steps, what we can do. So this was learning Watson using the curl command at the command prompt. So curl is very useful actually to write scripts. If you are aware, let us say the shell script you are writing or automation scripts. So those programs that work at the command prompt level, those are called scripts, and curl is very much useful in those scripts. Okay, so if I come to the bottom, at the next steps, it says learn how to customize language translator for your use case. So we were seeing the generic part of it, where it was identifying for those 68 languages, lots of stuff. And then if I'm into want to train Watson for my specific domain, then it can even be trained for that. But okay, so before you begin, it says make sure that your language translation service is on advanced or premium pricing plan. So we have to be on a advanced or a premium plan. So that is a paid plan. So with the light plan that we have, this feature is not available. But it says that it is possible to train Watson for our own domain that we are want to use Watson in. So for example, if someone wants to use in courts and law, it can train the Watson and speak the language of the courts using the advanced or a premium plan. Okay. Now comes the another interesting part is view the API and the SDK reference. So SDK is the software development kit by which we can actually start using in high-level languages, the Watson services. So let us go further. Let us say what it has for API and SDK. So it's a very good tutorial, right? So it starts from the very basic and then it keeps on going to the advanced level. Okay, so now we are on the API and the SDK page. And here on the right-hand side, if you see, these are the different languages in which Watson can be programmed, or we can interact with Watson in any of the language in one of this list. So curl we have already seen. It can be programmed in Java, it can be programmed in Node, in Python, in Go, .NET, Ruby, Swift, Unity. So Unity is used for making 3D graphics. So even we can have a very interesting applications made using 3D graphics, and then have the Watson capabilities running in the backend. So let us see how the Python SDK looks like. So we click on Python, and it shows us the Python web page. So it says the code examples on this tab use the client library that is provided for Python. Now, obviously, we need to know about the Python language when we want to interact with Watson. So just giving you a very high level overview. So this is what we have already seen. First, we log into IBM Cloud, and once we are permitted inside the IBM Cloud, we create a resource. So we created a resource for the translation service, and it returns us the credentials, that is the key and the URL. And using these credentials, we can invoke a functionality and get the results back, and we interact using the REST API. So we can keep on doing this, invoking the functionality, getting the result back, and doing some processing, and then giving the next set of data or next set of functionality of IBM Watson. So this process goes on, and our application can keep on progressing. So how do we make intelligent apps using Watson? So we need to have a development environment. So as we can see, lots of languages like Python or Java or Swift or Go. And then there are Watson SDKs for each of the language. So what does this SDK, the software development kit, provide us? Are the APIs for that particular language and the documentation. So lots of documentation is provided, and also the examples. So as we saw the example for the curl, similarly for each of the SDK, the example is also provided. So we are going to get some examples done in Python. So I hope most of us know about Python. And just to give an overview of Python to help others get started. So we can get Python from, so the latest version is Python 3. We can get from python.org. It can be run in interactive mode, that we get a Python prompt, or we can write Python scripts. And in the interactive mode, we also get a help command where very detailed documentation of Python is available. Python gives us data types like strings or numbers, and it also gives the complex number format to work on some mathematical solutions and problems. And then it has already provided lots of containers like lists or tuples, dictionaries, sets, which can be used for different purpose, and each of them come with their own special properties. And as usual for other high-level languages, it has different operations for doing the computations or logical, or lots of operators on different containers, so that we can place some data in these containers. We can extract the data. We can extract from the top, from the beginning, from the end, from a specific location. We can reverse these containers. Lots of operations are possible. And then normal control flow statements like if then else, or loops, for loop, while loop, then break and pass and continue. So all these things are available. Functions. So in functions, we can have positional arguments that we normally have in other languages. Interestingly, it has keyword arguments also. So positional is that I have to give the first argument, the value of the first argument at the first position only, and the value of the second argument at the second position only. And in keyword arguments, I can name each of the argument and I can use that argument while calling the function at any position. And then each of the argument I can give the default values. Interestingly, I can return multiple values also from functions. Then there are lambda expressions, which are very, very simple functions, one-line functions, and modules and packages that can be used to package big scripts of multi-file scripts together. Then it gives us to do the formatting in a much better, more pleasing way. File IO operations are available to how to handle the exceptions or the error conditions that the runtime errors and exceptions can be handled very gracefully in Python. And Python is a fully object-oriented language. We have all the facilities based for the OOPS programming in Python. And very important part is that I can extend Python with my own functionality also. So as well as I can embed Python into other languages. So these are also the possibilities using Python. So this was just a very brief overview of Python, just as a refresher. And since we interact in JSON format with any of the cloud service, including Watson, so there is a library that can be used in Python to get the JSON functionality. So there is a module that is a standard Python module, so called JSON. So I just import that module. Now JSON and Python dictionary, they are a very close match between them, and we can transform the data from a JSON format to a Python dictionary, or from a Python dictionary to the JSON format. So there is a JSON.loads function that will convert a JSON formatted data structure into a Python dictionary. And similarly, there is a dump-s that will take a Python dictionary and convert to the JSON format. So we have to we use these very excessively while interacting with a cloud service or interacting with Watson or the language translation that we want to do. So Watson SDK we have seen. So when we use these SDKs for any of this language, then we get the APIs for that specific language. We get the developer resources, debug resources, and the communities also, where we can interact and we can discuss our problems. We can get the solutions from the rest of the community. So going back to our Watson that we see works very interesting ways. And we are going to use the Python SDK. So actually, this is a big program that takes multiple days to cover. So I'm just going so fast, and it is really interesting when this program is conducted on site in a lab with the students actually doing these hands-on exercises with Watson, and it takes a day or two to complete all of this. And it's really so interesting that students and the participants, they come up with their own problem and they try to solve using Watson. Okay, so what we do is, first of all, we have to install this SDK. So here's the command which says pip install, and Ibm Watson is the package name. So this command, if we give on our command prompt, then it will install the Watson SDK, and we can import that Watson SDK and start using it. So lots of information is available on GitHub. So GitHub is an open repository for software. So if you just click on it, it will take you to the Python SDK of Watson. Now, in view of time, so on the left-hand side, you can see for the translator, for the language translator, what all things are provided. So on the endpoint URLs are there, authentication, versioning, error handling. So all these things, how to do it in Python, we have the examples. So I'll come directly to the methods that are there. So if I click on Okay, so on the list of supported languages. So first we want to know what are the capabilities of Watson. In which language can I? So for example, I'm writing a translation application. So the first thing I need to know is in which language can Watson converse before I can make my application enable and my application for that particular language or not. So this is how list of supported languages API I can use. So the function is called list languages. And here is an example request in Python. So here it says we import JSON because we have to parse the JSON both to interact, to send the request to Watson and to get the response back and to parse that response. And this is a standard way of using a particular package from the modules that we import. So we have already installed IBM Watson package in the first step, and now we are importing the language translator version 3. And we are importing the authenticator, IM authenticator. So here we see we have to put the same API key and the URL. To remember, we generated the API key and the URL for each of the service, and we have to provide over here. So this example, what it does is I can authenticate myself using this step, and I can set the URL using this line, and finally I can, so language translator, so this is the language translator instance, a handle to that, a handle or a pointer to that, and in that I'm invoking the list languages function. So as we see earlier, so it will give me all the list of the languages, and this I'm putting in a variable called languages, and using this json.dumps. So we saw that the dumps is used to convert a JSON file into the Python dictionaries format. So print is a Python function which can print any data type that is known to Python. So that is why we have to convert from JSON to the Python dictionary. So this is a very simple example where we get first we give the authentication key, and then we start we get a handle to the language translator, and we specify the URL that we want to talk to, and finally use the list languages method of that. So let us try to run this Python application. So this is a very basic application. So I'll copy it. Now what I need to do is I have to have Python running. So I have to start, what do we call it? Language translate.py. So I'm starting my notepad. It might not be, so I have to share it. Let me see if I can share. Okay, so by now it should be visible. So I'm just copy pasting my whatever I have copied from there, and we have to get the API key and the URL from Watson to start speaking to. So if I go back to my page and pick the API key, so this is the API key which I put here. So API key I have to put here. So it is so simple, right? And I have to get the URL and put the URL over here. So I have substituted the two things that it asked me to substitute, and it only thing left is to run this application. So this is a pure Python application which has imported Ibm Watson package, and we are just using the methods from that Ibm Watson package, and it is hopefully going to work. So I say Python, and my name was language-translate.py. So it will start and do the Python functionality and translate and get the interact with the Ibm Watson translate service and get me the languages which the Watson can understand. So let us hope it works, because it's all technology. Okay. Still working. Oh, okay, good. So it has come back with a list of all those 68 languages. And so it came in JSON format, and we converted it to Python dictionary. And here is what are those 68 languages that it has provided us. So looks like it has sorted also. Very nice. And it is okay. So let us see what it is giving. So this is the code for that language, AF, and the language name is Afrikaans, and the country code is ZA, must be Zambia. It has separated word direction left to right, and it can identify this language. And similarly, we have AR for Arabic, and direction is right to left. Very nice. It can understand this. Azerbaijan, Bashkir. So many languages it has. It says that I can work with. So simplified Chinese at the very bottom, and the traditional Chinese also. And I think this native language name, this is in Unicode characters. Maybe it is not able to display it properly. That is why it is showing the code for that. Very nice. So if you see, for some of these languages, words separated for Vietnamese is true, but for Chinese it is false. So if we have some experts in Chinese, they can give us more insight. What does this mean? But this is really nice what Watson can do for us in terms of this. Okay, what further we can do? Let me try to modify it and try to see if I can get the length of the languages that it has provided us. I print length after this. What happens? Okay, so it all came as a big one big dictionary, and that is why it is giving is okay. So I have to go one level deep into it, and then we can see how many data, how many languages it has identified for us. So this seems to be working well and good. So let us see if it has some other examples. So this was one method. Okay, so this is how this is the translate method that can be used from Python. So the method is called translate, and these are the parameters. So we have to give a text, we have to give a model ID, the source, target, and lots of other parameters that can be given. And all the details about those parameters are placed over here. And this is the response that we get: the word count, the character count, the detected language, the confidence level, and the translation. And some of them are always there, and some of them are not there. And then you can get the status code also, whether it was a success or the request was invalid, etc., etc. So let us see how the translation example is. Okay, so this is everything is same. We put the API key, we put the language translator and the URL, and this is what is different is that we are now using the translate method. So earlier we used the list language method, and now we can use this translate method. So here we can provide the text and then the model ID from English to Spanish. So I hope if I only copy this much and put in my earlier example, then this should be good enough. Here I can say print prime translation. And now if I run the same, let us see how does it go. Okay, nice. So earlier it identified other language, and this is what we started our translation service, and this is the return result. Hello from English to Spanish. So we gave in hello, how are you today? And this is the translation in Spanish, starting with hola. And this is how we can, now we can go a step further. We have this translation with us. We can start parsing this translation and then giving it to some other, let's say we can, in a way, or we can speak it using the text-to-speech service, and we can enhance, keep on enhancing our application like that. So as I mentioned, it's lots of things to learn in IBM Watson, and we have just scratched the surface of IBM Watson in this workshop. And if given a chance, it will be really nice if we can conduct a full-day workshop on IBM Watson to learn about it and to experiment and implement some applications using IBM Watson. So in view of time, I think we can stop at this point. So what I would suggest is to the participants who are interested, you can create an IBM Cloud account. And as we see, it is really straightforward. Once you are on ibm.com/Watson, you just at the very bottom, you get this build with Watson, and you click on it, and it will take you through the normal process of logging into the IBM Cloud, and then going back, is creating a, once you logged in, you can create a service that you want, speech to text, text to speech, visual recognition, all those services you can work on. And then you can create an instance, you get a tutorial, a very nice tutorial on starting with curl. And then you can select the SDK page, and then you can, whichever language you are comfortable with, Java or Swift or Go or Python, you can have the examples for those. You can copy those examples, start learning, and then you can modify those examples to make your own application. So important point here is that this is where the world is moving to, towards the intelligent applications, and this is actually what we have to learn ourselves. We have to upskill ourselves, as well as this is what we need to teach the students also, so that they become competitive in the upcoming days. So the businesses are moving towards AI, and we have to upskill ourselves, as well as we have to teach the students these the next generation technologies if they have to compete in the once they have passed out, they have completed their studies. So this is really very important. So cloud is becoming very important, and the AI is on the cloud, and lots of services on the cloud. They are becoming so much important that we are really we should be on the lookout to such opportunities and to learn ourselves, and as well as encourage our students to make the best use of these facilities. So with this, I would like to thank Professor Dr. Abdul Samad Sahab and the rest of the EMU community for giving me a chance to introduce IBM Watson to the participants, and thanks to all the participants for attending this interesting session on IBM Watson. It was really fun to try so many new things. It's always learning for me whenever I'm doing something hands-on on Watson. So over to you, Dr. Abdul Samad Sahab.
Thank you, Dr. Saif. Now the house is open for discussion. Participants, if you have any question, please put in the chat box. Very wonderful lecture indeed, and you have given full exposure of this Watson. And participants, if anybody is interested to work upon, they can have communication with Dr. Saif. He already invited you and the institution to make academic affiliation. Any question, please, here?
So are there any questions?
I think, yes, attendees, please put your questions. Dr. Saif, you talked about some supercomputer in the beginning.
Right.
So is it developed? Where it is developed? Can you give some insight of this?
Okay, so if you look, if you really want to know about supercomputers, so these are the latest supercomputer from IBM. So Watson is an application, right? So it's a software, an AI software that is running on a supercomputer. So there are two supercomputers. One is called Summit. So Summit is the topmost supercomputer from IBM currently.
Okay.
And it is employed in two of the research government agencies in USA. So for the national purposes that it is being used, the Summit supercomputer. And it is a 200 petaflops supercomputer, Summit, that is being used. And then there are other supercomputers also. The fastest supercomputer currently is from Japan. It is a 500 petaflops supercomputer.
And what is the latest supercomputer developed in India?
In India, it's Pratyush. It's in IISc Bangalore, Indian Institute of Sciences. So Pratyush is the latest supercomputer that is in India, that India has made.
After Param. Okay, I think there is no, yes, Param Shavak, someone is asking. Param Shavak supercomputer. Okay, yes, that has already been discussed.
So, Param is also, yeah, so Param was how the supercomputing started in India, and then there
I think it is the first one developed in India, Param.
Yeah, so Param was the first one that was developed by Sdk in India. And then there are a series of Param supercomputers with each latest enhancements and upgrades. So there is a family of Param supercomputers that are being developed in India, and they are also provided to some countries outside also.
Right.
Yeah, so Param is also a series of supercomputers from India. And supercomputing started with that when the Sdk was born.
Okay, thank you, sir. I conclude this session over here. And I thanks on behalf of the organizing committee, on behalf of the chairman, Department of Computer Engineering, I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Saif Abrar, who have delivered a very wonderful lecture and give insight of what he is doing there in the IBM. So I hope that we will be in touch with him in the future also. And
Yes,
due to this pandemic, we could not have invited in person. Maybe in some later time, we will invite you in the campus also. Thank you, sir.
Thanks a lot.